The first time I ever got on a plane was at 2 years old. We were flying from South Africa to Mexico, and what a shift of cultures that was. But it's safe to say, since that first plane trip, I have not stopped traveling since. The travel bug bit me, and I have just been an avid adventurer ever since. Ask my husband. The idea of getting on a plane, going to a country where I have no idea what's being said, to try new foods I've never tried before, is always the coolest thought to me. If he ever wants to spoil me, he takes me onto an adventure to experience something I've never known. Welcome back to the NextGen Prophets Podcast. I am your host, your mentor, and your big sister, Deborah Ann Dene Feltazen. And that travel bug is about to hit you too, because when we're going through our prophetic process, look, I'm going to be honest. Sometimes it's a little hard to tell where we are in that zone. Are we close to landing? Have we even taken off? Where on that map are we? Where on earth is Carmen Sandiego gonna go next? That's kind of how it feels when we're on our prophetic journey. Left is not always right and up is not always down. It's a weird topsy-turvy world. But I want you to calm down. I want you to track with me. Listen, dear prophets, to the sound of your big sister's voice. I've got the solution for you in this podcast. And even better yet, I want you to go to www.myprophetictribe.com and book a free prophetic consultation. Because if you don't already have all of the answers at the end of this podcast, that consultation with your big sis to help you find out where you are in your process and how to walk it out effectively is going to give you every last tool that you need to accelerate into your prophetic destiny. Now, I'm not just telling you about my love for travel for fun. I'm telling you about my love for travel because it helps you bring perspective of your process. When we get on that plane, the scariest part of that plane ride happens in two places: the takeoff and the landing. Takeoff because if you've never flown before, it's hard to contemplate or recognize that such a huge metal bird can just get up off the ground seemingly by magic. Now look, we're on the NextGen Prophets Podcast. We know it is by science. We know there is airlift dynamics, and we know that God has given man the technological know-how on how to lift those planes. But if you've never done it before, it can be scary. It can be intimidating. And you sit there wondering, did I get on the right plane? Am I going in the right direction? What if we hit turbulence? What happens then? Once you're up to cruising altitude, it's smooth sailing. You can kick back, relax, eat some pretzels, drink some ginger ale, get a cup of coffee, enjoy the in-flight movies, or just carry on reading your Bible and listening to your NextGen Prophets podcast and catch up on all the episodes you missed. It's chillaxed. But the second most scariest part of that flight is the landing zone, when you finally reach your destination. Now you've got to worry, am I going to land okay? Am I actually landing in the correct airport? Did my luggage make it okay from my layover? Did anything get broken in flight? Lord, please let my laptop screen still be in shape. And I don't want this plane to flip over with that weird turbulence as we hit the tarmac. It's crazy. It's scary. But after you've gotten on that plane so many times, you get used to it. You know what the flight hostess is going to tell you. You know the ins and outs of that airplane. And I'm here to help you navigate that journey. Because when it comes to us NextGen Prophets and impacting culture, it's very much like getting on that airplane. It's intimidating. We don't know exactly where we're going or what the end result is going to look like. But I can promise you this. You're going to get from point A to point B with minimal turbulence. So track with me a little bit as we go into Exodus chapter 20, verses 4 through 6. It says, "You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven, above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord, your God, I am jealous, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands to those who love me and keep my commandments." This is the second commandment that God ever gave his people. He said, if you want to live along to the thousands here, did you hear that in verse 6? If you want to live a long life and have blessing upon blessing go to thousands and thousands of generations, I need you to walk along this journey with me. As you have left behind the leeks of Egypt and the golds and you laid down your golden calves, I need you to trust the process that I am taking you through. What he was doing here in this verse is he was reprogramming the people's minds and view of the world. He was reprogramming their decision-making skills, because up until this point, you need to understand something. The children of Israel lived as slaves. They did not know what it meant to be free. They only knew how to live according to the culture they were raised in, and the culture they were raised in was a culture of slavery and servitude. They were in service to everybody else, and honestly, the pay they got didn't mean anything. They literally spent all their time trying to survive instead of thriving, instead of growing in wealth, health, and their entire lifestyle as a family, as a tribe that God had originally intended. So, yeah, their second commandment was, get to know me. Obey my commandments. Don't go looking for identity anywhere else. Don't base your decisions on the gods of Egypt or the gods of the Greeks or the gods of the Babylonians or any of these others that you are going to come across. I need you to be obedient to me. The golden calves cannot be allowed to remain. I need you to hear me. And throughout this process of journeying through the wilderness to their end goal, to their destination, which was the promised land, was a process of God continually reworking how they viewed the world around them, that the world belonged to them. They were the promised and the chosen people. And everywhere they walked, everywhere they placed their foot belonged to them. Imagine what that does for a people that for the longest time was not allowed to own anything except for their life. They were not allowed to own land in Egypt. They weren't really allowed to own their own homes in Egypt, not unless they worked to the point of death and blood, sweat, and tears. And then maybe the Egyptians would throw them a bone or two. And maybe if they work with somebody who's really high up in the noble party and that liked them, they would maybe be given some ownership over something. But they had never owned anything until God sent them on a walkabout throughout the wilderness and showed them what belonged to them. Now when they made their decisions, now when they contemplated what they wanted to do with their lives, how they wanted to raise their children, they made those decisions based on the fact that we are about to inherit a huge amount of land. Land flowing with milk and honey. A land with cities built that we will not even have to build. A land that has everything that we could ever want and then some. That's the decision I'm going to make for my family based on what I'm about to come into, the inheritance that is owed to me. We as prophets are called to bring about God's commandments, His worldview of culture to our sphere of influence. And I want you to consider your sphere of influence. I talked to you about this a little bit last week. But I want you to consider your sphere of influence. I want you to consider the people that you are connecting with. I want you to consider the environments you keep being placed in that God has given you ownership over. Because you are meant to change the viewpoint. You have been placed in a dark land. You've been placed in an area where maybe, Pharaoh is ruling and reigning and he's determining the lives of his people. But you are meant to bring perspective to those people to say there is a land flowing with milk and honey. If you are just obedient to the commandments of the Father whom you serve, to the Lord who created them and promised you this inheritance, you will receive an inheritance for thousands of generations to come. This shift in how you view the world is going to greatly impact the way you make your decisions and the way others make their decisions. Because yes, whether you believe it or not, you have indeed been called to change the culture of the people and of the area, the sphere of influence that you have been placed in. So as we wrap up this podcast today, I want to remind you that you are beautifully, you are wonderfully made, and that you have a very unique call on your life. God has formed you and painstakingly shaped you for this mandate and for the call on your life and for the people that you are surrounded with. So don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. Step up, open your mouth, begin to shift the perspective and say, hey, do you know you're not poor? Hey, do you know you're on the route to getting healthy and wealthy? Hey, did you know Jesus loves you and that it's okay to be a little afraid right now because Jesus has got you and he's going to lift you up and he's going to take that fear away. So, NextGen Prophets, I look forward to continuing this conversation with you as we look deeper into our worldview and decision making and how God has shifted us as the NextGen Prophets to shift the culture around us. If you have not already booked your ticket for our NextGen Prophet Summit happening in February on the 21st and 22nd, I recommend you do so. Go to myprophetictribe.com, book your ticket. If you can't make it live, it's okay. We've released a new ticket for those who can join us wherever you are. Create your own watch party. I want to know your name. I want to invest into you. So, this is your big sister signing out. You've landed safely at your destination. Now, let's take you further and higher than before. I'll see you in the next episode.